Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us from. This is Civic Space TV, and joining me today, we are the students from Kabale University, who are members of the Hope Initiative Club. My name is Douglas Onen, and I'll be your host, moderator for today's session. Tonight, we're discussing a discussion which, of course, has been going through the various series on the inter-university debates that has been airing on Civic Space TV. The conversation is around the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961 to date. But also we underpin this topic and ask ourselves this very rhetoric question that Uganda's unending quest for credible, free and fair elections. Ever since the beginning of elections in 1961, have we laid the foundation of betrayal or have we laid the foundation of democratic practice? Joining me to discuss this interesting and robust conversation, as I've earlier on stated, are students from Kabale University, the Hope Initiative chapter, who will help us unpack the conversation in no particular order. Allow me to go ahead and introduce my guests, but also I'll give them leeway to make an introduction of themselves, then we can dive straight into the conversation. I am joined by Muhoozi Daniel. Muhoozi Daniel is a student at Kabale University. We're very happy to have you here. Right next to Muhoozi Daniel, I'm joined by Ashraf Kawuya. He's also a student at Kabale University. Thank you very much for joining us on this show. Right next to Ashraf, we're joined by Akumu Makoha. You're most welcome. Very happy to have you here. She's also a student at Kabale University. Last but not least, we're also joined by Ainembabazi Ritah, a student as well at Kabale University. I'm just going to quickly give all of you a few seconds to say hello to the viewers, but also make a further introduction of yourselves. Let me start with Ritah Ainembabazi. Ritah?
Thank you so much, sir. My name, as it has already been said, I'm called Ainembabazi Ritah, a student at Kabale University, but pursuing an LLB degree. I'm in my year 2.
Thank you very much, Ritah. We're very happy to have you here, and we're looking forward to an interesting conversation with you. Akumu, over to you. Akumu?
Thank you so much. My name is Akumu Philise Makoha, a student at Kabale University, pursuing a bachelor's degree in law, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. We're very happy to have you here as well. Ashraf. Ashraf, you're muted.
Okay, thank you so much, CCG and Hope Initiative for this opportunity. My name is Kawuya.
Looks like we have lost Ashraf. Muhoozi, maybe when Ashraf gets back, we shall get back to him. Muhoozi, over to you. Muhoozi? Muhoozi, are you there? Okay, let's just start the conversation. Maybe when we get Ashraf and Muhoozi back on the call, we shall be in position to have them make their submissions. Allow me to start with you, Ritah, at this point. The conversation today centers around the credibility of elections from 1961 to date. And of course, it's very important to lay a premise, first of all, on providing a historical context to this conversation. So my question to you is, how would you assess the credibility of Uganda's first elections in 1961 and 62? Were those elections, did they lay a foundation, or did it lay a foundation of betrayal or a foundation of democratic practice? Ritah, over to you. You're muted, Ritah. Ritah? All right, looks like we are not able to hear Ritah. Akumu, allow me start with you on this point because I've tried. In trying to establish a historical context to this conversation, yes, it's important to lay a premise to know whether the 1961 general election. Yes, Ritah, you're back on. Yes, if you can mute your video when making your submission so that the video does not interfere with then you're making your submissions, because I see your bandwidth is low. Over to you, Ritah.
Then click the video. What's not happening? It's not clear.
Akumu, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Drake, we can't hear you. We are not getting you very well.
Please mute. I am asking, the question goes to, okay, can you hear me? Yes, my question to you is, in trying to lay a historical context to this conversation, it's important to have a premise. 61 and 62 elections lay the foundation of betrayal or a foundation of democratic practice. That's why my question to you is, how would you assess the credibility of Uganda's past elections in 1961 and 62? Were they a foundation of betrayal or a foundation of democratic practice? Ashraf.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake, for such a wonderful question. I would like to recap and give a simple background to the previous election, and we are going back to the 5 major elections that had been held after the 1995 constitution had been drafted. We see it is worth still to give a recommendation, because we say credit is given away it's due. Indeed, we first recommend and say indeed there's a step that has been taken, because the first step that has been taken is allowing the citizens of a country to take part in election, and then though later on we have to give in our submissions and cite out the incredibilities and various scenarios that have made maybe made us as the citizens, or maybe as the observers and the responsible citizens, to say maybe this is not good, or this is not good. I will reflect back and say as we all know that we are heading to the 2026 general elections, which have been scheduled for 15th January 2026. And I will have to first maybe ask you to allow me to give in my foresight on this and say I'm already suspecting something that is very vigorous in nature, something that is very chaotic, and something that is that we shall live to remember for the rest of our lives. Because by the start of these campaigns, because the first step is people getting nominated, we have seen a lot of chaos that has taken shape from the first step. We have seen we had over 50 presidential aspirants that picked the nomination forms, but only 8 were allowed to return the nomination forms on very many grounds, and where many of them complained of very many inconsistencies in the national and the electoral commission, which we expected to be an independent body that would allow every Ugandan that has the required qualifications to use his or her rights, because it is a democratic right for every Ugandan and every person who has the required qualifications to be part and parcel of the general elections. But we saw very many scenarios that occurred whereby we saw that we are complaining that they took on the required qualifications, but only to be bounced at the gate offices of the Electoral Commission. And that it was an earlier indicator. In literature, we call that foreshadowing. It was foreshadowing what we were bounded to face in the upcoming general elections. More still, we can see there are very many things that are already happening. Now, we have seen that Uganda has increased its security forces and its recruitment capacities. Because now, I imagine, instead of getting more election observers, creating awareness, because we see the problem according to the United Nations observers. We see that the biggest problem that Ugandans are facing right now, it is not only because that people votes are rigid or done what, but these people are not educated. They lack education about the voting processes and about their voting rights. That's why someone will tell you in my deep villages in Kanungu and the western part of Uganda, will come here and stand up and tell you that I will wake up at 6 a.m. and the only intention is not to look for any other candidate, but to go to the polling station, and whoever gives him or her a matchbox or a bag of salt, a sacket of salt, will be the rightful candidate. And if you want to get them very well, just get out your t-shirts and your caps, go to the polling station early in the morning, even if you've been doing nothing, beating voters, and you have even been in Kampala after getting the first time you went to for 5 years and you were in Kampala. Just get your sort, get your matchboxes, t-shirts, caps, and then come back at the polling day. You have to win with a landslide victory. And what does that mean? That qualifies, and it is right to assert that these people we are having in Uganda right now, they are not informed about their voting rights. They are not. I think, and they would question the Electoral Commission. Instead of going to buy those vehicles that are worth millions and millions of money, sending in things that will not even count out. Why not go out deep down in the villages, in the deep ends of Nakapiripiriti and other areas in Uganda, and inform those masses? Because those people just go to the polling station without an intention of looking for work for them. That's why they cry for the rest of their lives. And someone gives you 1,000, goes to parliament, you cry for the whole 5 years. And still he comes the other time, changes the other words, and still cry for the rest of the time. Me, I will still say, as we are now heading to the 2026 general elections, unless we are going to, our voters are now, and the government takes in an initiative, the Electoral Commission, which should be an independent body, should move out right now and go into deep down the village, because I'm very sure there are even our people in our area that they all know that a rightful candidate to vote, you just go to the polling station, look for the bus, tick, go home. But I think now we should be getting leaders that have capacity and capability, not leaving to people that have material wants, that maybe this one has given me 1,000, this one has given me this has given me this. And now that questions the credibility of the elections. And this has not been happening for only maybe the recently concluded primary election, but it has been happening continuously. I can allow me to stress back to the 2006 general elections, which were held, and these were the first multi-party elections that were held in Uganda. And those were the
Let me hold you there, Ashraf. Let me just hold you there. We shall get to the topic of the discussion of multi-party dispensation at some point. But thank you for that robust explanation and laying the premise for tonight's discussion. Let me get to you, Ritah, in Ainembabazi. A similar question I'll still front to you is, how would you assess the credibility of Uganda's first elections in 1961 and 62? Were they a foundation or a betrayal of democratic practice? Ritah.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Looking at elections of 1961 and 1962, basically these were the first national elections under the British colonial rule, and it was just after independence, and actually it was a declaration of independence. But though, while they were relatively peaceful, they were characterized by regionalism and ethnic division. Because when you look at the kingdoms that at that time, you can see that Buganda Kingdom was almost favored. It had the most notable people, and like it was so favored compared to the other one. So this election was characterized by division amongst people, amongst tribes, though it was peaceful. Looking at the credibility, I would describe it as a moderate, institutional, nurse, and political competition was building but fragile. That is all I can say, that it was relatively peaceful, but on the other side, it was fragile. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ritah, for that premise that you have laid there. Relatively peaceful and fragile, but you also said it was characterized by a lot of sectarianism and nepotism. Of course, that means it at some point laid a foundation for not only betrayal, but also in your submission, this also laid the foundation of democratic practice. Muhoozi Daniel, my interest now is on electoral malpractice. From the submissions of Ashraf and submissions of Ritah, we get the idea that electoral malpractice in sectarianism, in vote stuffing, among other malpractices, has of course traversed the electoral cycle in this country. My question to you is, what patterns of electoral malpractice can be traced across different regimes from 1961 to date? Daniel Muhoozi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. I'm so happy to be here, and I've been tasked to talk about the malpractice of elections in Uganda by now. And in my submission, I will have us first. I want us to also first agree that malpractice has taken a big role in affecting the credibility of the fair credibility and the fairness of the elections in Uganda. The most thing that I take as the malpractice that has the most thing that has led to the increase of the malpractice is the commercialization of politics in Uganda, and we all believe that commercializing politics in Uganda is not allowed. Is not allowed. In this Uganda now, the rigging and stuffing of ballots, everything is fueled by the commercialization of politics. Politics is running with money, and we have seen in most cases and most instances where money has influenced the polling agents, the polling system, and everything, starting from the electoral commission. And this money is also one of the things that blindfolds all the people to take part in the malpractices that are in these elections. Take an example of the recent primary MPs elections. We have seen many incidents, possibly here in Kabale, where the electoral officials have been given money, and they use that advantage. Being blindfolded by the money, they allow the staffing of ballots. They also affects the same issue, is that the deployment and the military influence in these elections. It was strict regarding on the basing on the recent MP primary elections. Those people that have connections in the army and those who have had a big hand in influencing the army and the security officials in their respective districts have that upper hand of winning the vote by using those military advantages to influence the elections. In this case, if that person has enough security, he takes it as an advantage of having the chances and having the power to stuff ballots, to also intimidate the people around the polling stations, even people who have even also intimidate people to vote the person they don't want to vote. We have seen also most of the incidences, the malpractices that are taking place, the vote rigging, even the pre-electional system is also influenced by the military. It is also, we have seen that when people are on their rallies, MPs even basing it clearly on the Chagulanyi issues, where the police has to break down those rallies and disperse the people with tear gas and red pepper and beating and tortures. Those things intimidate the voters, and that's showing the loopholes in the electoral system. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Muhoozi. You laid down that electoral malpractice has been characterized and evolved in monetized politics and involvement of the army, which influences the vote, among other reasons. Of course, that's a very interesting analysis. Let me get to you, Akumu. Looking at from all the submissions of Ashraf, Ritah, Muhoozi, our past is influencing the current so much. And in that regard, my question to you is, to what extent have historical experiences of disputed elections shaped Uganda's political culture?
Philise.
Thank you so much, Joe. Listen to the submissions of my colleagues Ashraf, Ritah, and Daniel, and yeah, in their submission, they have had these common things like the historical background, the past those elections, like they have had an impact and they have contributed a lot to how the elections are being conducted currently. Taking an example from the 1961 elections, where we see some people abrogating these elections, like as Ritah said, it was based on regionalism and all that. Some people from another region coming together, that is the UPC of Dr. Obote, that formed a coalition together with the Kabaka and during that period, this made the DP of Benchwanuka not to go in for the elections. And we feel like that aspect alone, like, does not amount like to credibility, and it does not lay a good foundation that the current elections should follow. If at all people who have a right to vote, and these are people who are supposed to vote, like to express their interest through the leaders they feel like they are capable, if they are coming up and they are not going for elections just because the other party has sided with the other one, it does not give a good example to the future elections that we are going to have. Then Daniel talked about the malpractice and all that. So I feel like the aspects of malpractices that have been happening way back in all the previous elections that we have been having, let me say the 2000, 2001, 1990, 1994, and all those other elections before the 1995 constitution, like they have an impact because these effects keep recurring up to the current elections. He was talking about malpractice, and he talked about through the use of the resources, the intimidations, and the violence that happen, whereby we see the army coming in, they're influencing the people getting intimidated, and they end up just voting, not because that is the leader that they want, but just because of fear of violence and the intimidation. And also, he talked about the aspect of politics being commercialized, where everyone feels like without money they cannot vote. People are not voting their leaders that they feel like they should represent them, but people are voting. They are voting depending on how much has someone given me, how much has this one given me, how much has this one given me. And that does not create a good in the future elections that we are supposed to have. Let me say that 2026 elections that we are preparing for. So when all these aspects keep on coming, we shall not have a free and a fair election. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akumu, for that illustration. elaborative submission as regards to the historical experiences of disputed elections that have shaped Uganda's political culture. Ashraf, let me get back to you. Of course, the 1995 Constitution is a document that all of us in our generation is familiar with. This document, of course, in its promulgation, it promised to offer us free and fair elections. This year, 8th of October, we celebrated the Constitution made 30 years. And my question to you is, the 1995 Constitution promised us free and fair elections. 30 years later, has it delivered on that promise of delivering free and fair elections?
Thank you, Mr. Drake. As the Constitution of 1995, I would refer it to a mere piece of paper that was just written, and it has not delivered anything to the required expectations, because it had very many provisions as per the Constitution says, whereby we believe that injuries and very mishaps that have happened after the drafting of 1995 Constitution. A case to answer, we have seen now, we believe for a free and fair election to be handled or to be conducted after the 1995 Constitution has provided that elections should be free and fair, where people line up in the back spot, go to the polling station and vote leaders of their choice. But this has been a complete opposite of what was expected as drafted in the 1995 Constitution that provided for free and fair elections. And that has come in very many scenarios. We trace back to 2001, we see 2006, where Civic was contesting, and he was the very person to first run to court. And I don't know if it is everywhere in this country, but we all believe, I was still young, but all our elders now believe that 2006 election was rigid and Besigye was robbed of his victory. And still we go back to 2011, that's where we see still Dr. Kano Chiza Besigye was also bouncing back, and that is where still he was still not happy about the results of the elections that were out, and he still ran to court. So Mr. Drake and the rest of the panel that is here with me, I believe that all the continuous submissions and the continuous scenarios where we see the presidential election, the presidential candidates run to court after the elections completely manifest the very many horror, the very many inconsistencies, and the very many things that happen in these elections that are not supposed to happen. We see in 2021, that was the most recent election where we saw the National Unity Platform was fronting Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, but still it was a landslide victory for the incumbent, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, whereby we are able to grab at least a reasonable percentage of votes compared to the past candidates. We see the Honorable Mr. Kyagulanyi was able to grab 37 point something percentage of the elections, but still we saw him still running to vote. Why? He was not happy with the election process. We saw arresting of political opponents. A certain candidate, when a certain candidate is making a rally, that is very fine. No one is blocked, and even the security forces are supporting him, are giving him a procession and protecting him, and as it is needed in the Constitution. But now we are seeing the security forces, instead of being the very people to protect the presidential candidates as it is provided in the Constitution, they are the very people that are beating, that are blocking. Even it has just happened of recent where we saw the conservative Mr. Mubarak Manyagwa, a presidential candidate, is blocked, and he was the first presidential candidate to be arrested. So what does that mean? It is already breaching the Constitution, which provides for a free campaign trail, whereby these security forces escort us, give us necessary security, and give us all the necessary support we should need. And then more still, we are seeing, I still question the trend and the format that is used to choose the electoral commission committee and whatsoever. How can you tell me under what circumstance can me as Ashraf, be appointed as the chairperson of the electoral commission without anything, and someone appoints me out of the blue, and then in an election, I announce that very person to be losing, automatically I think this is something more of a movie than anything, because how can I do that? Automatically that is next to impossible. Of course, I have to make sure we call it a meal card. I have to support my meal card. I have to make sure the candidate put me into power stays in power, and I have to make sure that my master is so happy and is also and is gaining. And to be happy, I have to make sure that he is winning, so that I can confirm the reason as to why I was put in that election. So that's why I will wrap up everything and say the 1995 Constitution is just a mere piece of paper that was signed and just put there, but nothing in that constitution is being observed, because we have seen very many things are still happening. The influence of the security forces, who are the people to be protecting us, they are the very people now. Someone who sees a police officer runs, instead of seeing a savior, you are the very person to run. We see the violences in the elections. You're rigid. They file the elections, and out of 100 elections that are conducted, 99% of the election of the people that have been elected are running to court for a petition. Why? Meaning there are very many inconsistencies, and people are not happy with the system. We go now still maybe to end with. I can also talk about the current nomination processes that are taking place. We remember we see these the journalists who believe Napoleon Bonaparte says if you want to suppress a country internally or without any budget, suppress the place. And I think these very people are following the rightful steps of Napoleon, and these people are following steps of dictators and they are following tyranny, and they are doing anything to suppress us of our rights. And that question is, do we have a constitution? If we have a constitution, where is it and what is it doing? And that's where I all stand up and say the journalists that have been beaten, the Francis Sanos have been beaten to nothing. And now becoming a journalist is now like, maybe now someone was saying these journalists should always now go for military training before going to fields, because it is now more of a military course than a journalism course, because they are beaten, they are done what, and these are the very people whom we believe they are innocent, and we believe information is power. So if you prohibit us from getting informed, so you want to rule us in a way that we won't understand, like taking us in bags, like as if we are not understanding where the nation is going. I will still stand firm and say the 1995 Constitution was just a mere piece of paper that was signed in Kampala, and nothing else. It has helped its citizens up to now, and I still know we are already a generation that is doomed. We have killed our past seriously, and I see our future is seriously being killed as we have killed in the past. We have to rise up and see what's going on. Thank you so much, Mr. Drake.
Very much for that very passionate submission in regards to telling us the 1995 Constitution that promised to give us a free and fair election. I held on that premise. And from your elaborative submission, you highlight numerous examples and experiences that showcase the failure of the 1995 Constitution to give us a free and fair election, highlighting the involvement of the army, the monetized politics, among other examples that you notably highlight in your submission. Let me get to you, Ritah. I'll still pose to you the same question. Would you agree that the 1995 Constitution that promised to give us a free and fair election has also failed to deliver on the promise? Ritah.
Thank you so much. With citing Article 6 of the 1995 Constitution as amended. This article provides for a right to vote. But when you look at the situation of the country, voting is based on whether you have a card, and if you don't have, you're not allowed to vote, especially for these national votes, not the primary ones. So you can see a person, if a person does not have an in number or that card, that yellow card registered in that book, is not allowed to vote. Yet the Constitution itself provides any citizen of Uganda, as long as you're 18 years and above, a right to vote. So we can see that these legislators made provisions, but they do not observe the provisions. I'll give you another vivid example of Article 67 closely, which provides that all presidential candidates shall be given equal time and space on the state-owned media to present their programs. So take a look at elections on the 2006 elections when Chiza Besigye was supposed to have his airtime at UBC television, and he was denied access to state-owned television. Now, of course, he had to file an election petition. And of course, he was also challenging the provision of the Constitution. Why is it provided in the Constitution? Yet the Constitution is the rule of law, it is the grand norm, it is the supreme law of Uganda. It is being by those that made it, of course. So in that petition, he was challenging that provision. That why would you make that provision and then you can't enforce it? So when you look at these provisions, they are made, but they are not observed. Of course, the ruled in favor of chief president was paid damages. So you can see that there is corruption, because why would all the other presidential candidates be given airspace on the same television that is state-owned, and it is emphasized in the Constitution as a provision, as a right to all those presidential candidates, yet for him he was denied. So provisions are there in the Constitution, but they are not enforced. So that is what I can say. There could be more examples I could give, but you can see that provisions are there that symbolize the unify improvement, but they have not been enforced. So basically, this constitution lacks enforcement. That's all I can say on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ritah, on that submission. Let me get to you, Muhoozi. Muhoozi, my question to you is, looking at the current electoral framework, where we know that the president is the one who goes ahead and appoints the electoral commissioners. My question to you is, does the current electoral framework under the 1995 Constitution adequately safeguard the independence of the Electoral Commission? Muhoozi.
Yes, Mr. Drake, I beg your pardon on your question.
My question to you is, does the current electoral framework under the 1995 Constitution adequately safeguard the independence of the Electoral Commission?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Drake. I will start by saying that we have lacked the current constitution of Uganda is lacking its autonomy. It is not independent. We are seeing that it is influenced by the head of state. In this case, it's just because the powers granted by the constitution allow the president to elect and appoint all the people that are supposed the head positions in the electoral commission. In this case, it will be hard for those people to go against his will. It will be so easy for him to dictate and tell them what to do, and they will easily do it. One of the other things that I will have to talk about this constitution, we will have to see the amendments that were made in 2005 about the same constitution, where the age limits and term limits were removed. In this case, this was done in the favor of the incumbent, who is the current president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. This thing has helped him to consolidate his power for a long time. In this, the tampering of the constitution, amending it to having no term limits and age limits, any person who is in the presidential seat can rule for any years that he can, has also helped him to continue using his powers and influence the election. And we will all have to believe that for as long as this man has been the president, there has not been any fair elections. He has been so influenced in the deployment of the military in the elections. We see that the people on his side are not influenced by these problems that are influenced to the opposition sides. We see that the people who belong to the NRM are peacefully doing their they are on their press conferences. They are mobilizing for votes, and we see that the opposition members are also denied the chance to spread their manifestos around the country. Taking an example from the last presidential elections, the pre-election situation was not so good for the opposition side, as we saw what happened to the Chagulanyi. We see there was massive beating of the supporters of Chagulanyi, breaking down his rallies, and he was also even his right-hand men are being imprisoned over political issues, and we are not seeing the same thing happen to the NRM side. I therefore think that the constitution that was made in 1995 has also has loopholes that are facilitating the incredibilities that are taking place in the elections of Uganda as it is now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Muhoozi. Akumu, let me get, we're still talking about the constitution. Knowing that the current electoral framework, as also highlighted by Muhoozi, is that the president is given the mandate to appoint the electoral commissioners from the chairman of the EC to other key positions in the electoral commission. So my question to you is, should the appointment of the electoral commissioners remain a prerogative of the president, or should Uganda as a country explore independent selection mechanisms of the electoral commissioners?
Thank you so much, Mr. Brock. According to the Constitution, in regard to the Electoral Commission, that is Article 59 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda as amended, we see that the president is given that mandate to appoint the chairperson of the Electoral Commission and 5 other members that belong to that commission. I'll first take you back to Ashraf's submission, where he says that, and I concur with him, he says that when a person is appointed by the president, what do you expect that person to do? Will you expect that person to conduct elections in a fair way, in a way that is against the person who appointed him? I feel like that is not fair, and in Uganda, if we continue to have such elections whereby the electoral commission is appointed where the chairperson of the electoral commission is appointed by the president, we shall never have free and fair elections, because these people are always making things that are in favor of the person who appointed them, in fear of losing their positions. So my stand is, I feel like Uganda, we should get an independent body that appoints these people, or it might be brought back to the public to vote the people who they feel like they can act in a way that is fair and free while conducting these elections. The Electoral Commission, let me give you an example. Among their functions as stated in Article 60 of the Constitution, one of their mandate is to revise through the voters register, make updates, and give feedback to the people before the election period has come. So we feel like these people have been doing so, but then we feel like there is a lot of inefficiency in the way they do their updating of the register. You find that someone has all the requirements needed to qualify that person to vote, but then you find that the person goes and it checks if the register, the name is there, and before you realize it on the day of the election, their names are not there and all that. And I feel like all this comes through the influence of the people who appointed them. When someone realizes that in this specific region, the opposition is too strong and all that, these people can be influenced to do such a thing. They can be influenced to make changes so that they eliminate people who they feel like they're of the opposite political party. So on that point, I feel like the mandate to appoint the chairperson and other members of the electoral commission should not be left to the president. It should be given to the public or an independent body, an independent body that votes these people or appoints them. So that's the only way we are going to attain free and fair elections in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Akumu, for that submission and for trying to show us where exactly we need to have an independent electoral commission. Ashraf, the conversation now is going to shift to democratic practice. You know, in your submissions, you highlighted the fact that we have seen Dr. Kizza Besigye going against the decision of the Electoral Commission, contesting the results of the votes. And that is just one example that you highlight in your submissions. So my question to you is Uganda's recurring cycle of contested elections a reflection of weak institutions or a reflection of political culture?
Thank you so much, for such a wonderful question. But still, before I even move any further, as I would still like to send my heartmost prayer to freedom fighter and our homeboy, Kizza Besigye, who is rotting in Ruzira prison on grounds that we.
Ashraf, we have lost you. You're muted. Yes,
Okay.
you're making your submission.
So right now, I would still like to comment and say we have seen straight back from 2006. That's where we have seen the constant election petitions after every commission, even before the elections are announced or everything that has happened. We see already signs that something is not happening that is normal. I will take you back now to 2021. We see the nature in which these elections were announced. Things got heated, elections were counted, but results were not coming out. That's why we saw the internet was down. That is very right, because according to the European Union, that was an election observer in Uganda, noted that the internet was down. And why switch off the internet? We believe information is power. And if you know, Mr. Drake, that whatever you're doing is in light, why do you need to hide in darkness to do that? If you know, maybe Daniel is winning an election, why does he need to use other awkward ways, like switching off the internet so that the rest of the world cannot know what is happening? Election has been shut off. It was like a real total hell at the night of that election. At that night, I thought that was the end of the world, because there was total darkness. There was insecurity, military patrols. I think it was maybe like World War III. The military vehicles were rushing up and down. The internet was down. The total darkness was there. So as a student of the light now, I just felt the situation that was prevailing at the moment. The setting was very, very, very frightening. I was expecting something that was very, and I was praying that yes, we all need change. But at the moment, I was praying that maybe let this incumbent win his election peacefully, because I was suspecting what was bound to happen was very vigorous and we would live to remember it for the rest of our lives. And the continuous cases that have happened of appeal, that these people are not happy with the elections. But now I feel like this is no longer making sense, because going to court, of course, it is like maybe a game. You go to court, after reaching court, you make your submission and give whatever is needed. But of course, the verdict is very final. We remember Justice Kakuru was the only person on the panel of judges that ruled out the submission and said maybe the election was not free and fair. On the panel of 5, and he was only one. That could not make any sense at the moment. So already the areas where we are going to petition, the very person that we are submitting our petition towards is the very person that is appointing the very people. Look at Justice Owinyodoro. Look at everyone. He's the very person that appoints them. So should we expect that that person is going to help us really? Automatically, I think that we are playing maybe 106 games. May I think even these the petitions maybe are just a wastage of time. I'm sorry to say, because we are very sure where we are taking them. He is the very person that appointed them to that position, and he's the very person that gives them benefits and everything. So it is very obvious they have to make sure that their person, even if you bring a cargo and a container of petitions, nothing will ever happen that will happen, and that will help us as long as we are not getting something. And that's why people have lost interest. People are now disillusioned. They now believe that now something that is systematic, and which should be our fundamental right to go out, go to the polling station, vote for our input for the candidates of the case of our choice. Mr. Drake, I would like now to reflect us back to the recently concluded elections, the party elections that happened. Honestly, that manifested what we are bound to face in the upcoming elections come January. Whereby now it was more of a money game. It was more of a money game. I can call it a casino game. Whereby now people were now just giving out splashing money. The order of the day was splashing money. And now my question would go: how do you expect someone that has given you 1 million for you to go into his bank or her bank? Do you think that person will deliver? Will you ever question that person to give you accountability? Automatically, no. If I give you my money, if I give you my bag of salt, automatically I will never allow you to ask me anything, because automatically I also have to get back what I invested in that one, because those people invest a lot in those elections. So once we and even when we do not go to the petition things, unless we the very people get out that mindset about in us. And what hurts me most is that we as the youth, we are expected to be the very people that should be heading this transition. We see in Madagascar, the youth got into arms and managed to change the government. We saw Kenya, the generals are doing well, and Kenya is one. I think it's one of the role model areas in East Africa. But we are not borrowing a leaf. You just give me 1,000, automatically I will be like, I will have to go to support you, I will have to put on yellow for the world day. You give me a plate of food, but then that plate of food is depriving me of my rights. You go now to everything has been the judicial system is now corrupted. You go there with your cases, automatically you will be wasting time. You run to the electoral commission, there is no way. I saw presidential candidate John Katumba complaining. The very person that contested in 2021 with legit, with legible and authentic academic qualifications was bounced at the gates of the electoral commission that his documents and other qualifications were not clear. I think this is more of a comedy, because now, should we think the body that appointed him last time was changed? Because I think it is Justice Biabakama and his team that was responsible for nominating those very candidates. But now they are bouncing them that they should go back. I saw Mari Mabirizi. I saw someone like Michael like Kasibante. These were the newcomers and the new kids on the block. But now, should we think now John Katumba there was another John Katumba that was contesting? Or I think the judicial system, even if we submit more than 1,000 petitions after an election, that will not help. And still, the electoral commission is not independent. Actually, I think it should be now branded in any other way, show its support to the government. Because even if you submit you bring submissions from the topmost lawyers around Uganda and the other parts of Africa and the world, they cannot win a petition when an election has been announced, because indeed these people are fulfilling what why they were appointed. They have to make sure that their boss and the person who appointed them is very pleased, so that maybe they can get more privileges to say. So I think maybe this petition, even if we continue petitioning, we can get something else other than petitioning. And the independence of the electoral commission is questionable. And the 1995 constitution, I would still stand my ground and say it is just a mere A4 ream of paper that was cracked and written, and it is nothing but just ceremonious stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashraf, again for that passionate submission. Allow me get to you, Ritah. Multi-party dispensation was introduced in the year 2005, reintroduced in the year 2005 after a referendum. And my question to you is, has Uganda's multi-party system since 2005 enhanced or weakened electoral credibility?
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Looking at the period when the multi-party system were reintroduced after the referenda in 2005, I'll focus on 2021 election. You can see that this in that period there was increased competition. Formally, when you look at the period of 1989, when NRA was the only party, it was a single party system. So had interests, they were not given that chance because it was only one party that had like all the authority to host elections. But in 2005, we can see that several parties voted, including the UPC, like several parties were, it was no longer a single party system where people now had freedom to contest and also participate in the elections like freely. But now when you look at the period, there was intimidation, there was bias, there was voting. Example, when you look at the period of 2021 elections, most of the notable opposition leaders were even arrested. For example, you look at the opposition leader, and also opposition leaders were denied like rights to access some premises. Yet, when you look at the ruling party, their candidates are fully allowed to access different premises. But when you look at the opposition candidates, some of them were being denied. And to take the credibility, you can see that the credibility of that period after the multi-party system was reintroduced, it was very questionable because that is when the rate of corruption was very high, several cases being filed, but though these petitions were being filed, they were not enforced. For example, I'll give you an example of the 2006 election. It was an allegation that Honorable Civic had won the election. And now on the day of delivering the judgment, like the ruling, the late Honorable Justice Kanyihamba, that video is on record. He stated that it is true that Chizabesigye had won the election, but on the day of the ruling, of delivering the ruling, on the doorway to the court, his co-judge said, "No, I cannot rule against the government. I don't want to lose my life." He changed the ruling from the toilet. So you can see, you can look at such an incident. You see, these people know that this is the truth, but they do not want to follow. So, though the parties were introduced again, the ruling party is in a way that it is rigid. It does not want the other party to do what? Like to also expose and exercise its own rights. And also, when you look at the functions of the Electoral Commission, one of the functions is that it is mandated to deliver results, credible and authentic results to the people after the elections. But now, sometimes it is obvious that this person has won, but the results is a different case. So you can see the independence of the Electoral Commission. The members are appointed by the president. Its independence, it is also interfered with in one way or the other. Its independence is provided for actually under the Constitution that in exercise of its functions, no one shall interfere, no authority or individual shall interfere with their activities. But we have seen it being interfered with, it has been compromised, and the authenticity is highly doubted. So we can see that according to the petition from James Ranyali and others versus the Attorney General in 2006, which led to the referenda and the introduction of multi-party system. You see, James Ranyali and these people were challenging the credibility of the single party system, which was only NRA, currently known as the NRM, which is the ruling party. you can see that they are challenging of that single party system and advocating for the reintroduction of multi-party system led to that referendum which ushered in the reintroduction of the multi-party system. So you can look at the way they were granted and reintroduced, but the way they were introduced, some of like the ruling party is more pertinent and favored than the others, which is unfair and hence making the credibility of the elections questionable. That is all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ritah, for that interesting submission. Akumu, I am interested in, of course, as we edge towards the end of this conversation, we as young people, do we still believe in elections as a pathway for change, or have we lost faith in the ballot? Akumu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. According to the elections that have been held, especially the ones under the 1995 Constitution, I based on that to say that we have really lost hope in the elections. Given the fact that we have the provisions in the Constitution, we have the Electoral Commission Act, we have the Political Parties Organization Act, all those laws are there. But then still we are having elections which are not free and fair. I feel like that we have really lost hope and there is a lot that needs to be done before Uganda can attain the free and fair elections. One of the things that should be done is putting these provisions into practice. All these provisions that talk about funding of the political parties and everything, if they come up and then they start putting this into practice, whereby the different political parties are given equal funding so that they are in position to run their activities, to make their campaigns equally, that one will make us have hope in the elections and feel like indeed there is going to be change. Then also another aspect is also in the electoral commission. If at all that it is independence is granted, then that's the only way we are going to have hope in the elections and feel like, yeah, we are going to be in a position to have the free and fair elections. But then my stand is that Ugandans have really lost hope in this, because at least before the constitution, people were saying maybe because we don't have a clear constitution, we don't have something like that, like the clear guidelines that can help us to have free and fair elections. But then even after enacting these elections, this constitution and having so many provisions about the election and how elections should be handled, they are not being put into practice. So the only way we are going to do this is these things being put into practice, granting the different commissions their independence without interference. Then also the aspect of the judiciary, where I feel like the people who are aggrieved by the decisions of the Electoral Commission, they put their petitions to the courts of law. And then the judges who are going to preside over those cases are appointed by the president. That is the ruling government. What do you expect? Obviously, to rule in their favor. And that's something that is so unfair and that is hindering us to have credible elections and making us fail to have hope that we can change. Then also another thing is the incompetence and the use of the state resources at the expense of other political parties. That is something that has also made the Ugandans to lose hope, because the ruling party is having access to the army, to the funding and all that. So by all means, they will always be at the top of the other political parties, because the other political parties don't have access to such. Even when they are given funding, their funding cannot be equivalent to what NRM is being given. And therefore, my advice, I feel like my advice to Ugandans would be it is in respect to multipartyism. Yes, the aspect of multipartyism is good, and yeah, it helps us like to have hope in the elections. But then how are they conducting themselves? We feel like there are so many political parties that are coming up, but the reason being like they are not anyway, they want to fight for the what? For the interest of the people. But the number of political parties coming up should also be regulated. Trust me, if we had like, let me say only three political parties that are coming up to stand for the presidential seat, it would be for these people. It would be if it because the elections that keep going to other political parties. Now you find there are so many political parties, they get maybe like 3%, the others getting 5%. So I feel like if these political parties come up and maybe they come together and form like 3 united political parties, I feel like that one can help us to fight for people's interests. They can easily represent the people, and yeah, in that way we can be in position to have a change. That's my submission.
Thank you very much, Aku. Thank you. Muhoozi, let me get to you as we edge towards the conversation. What are your recommendations and concluding remarks to the discussion today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Drake. One of the things that I think that should be put in place to end these incredibilities in elections and all the things that are taking place in all the incredibilities. First, we should also see that the people in Uganda have lacked enough interest, and they don't trust the Electoral Commission of Uganda. Only that it also assumes powers from the current president or the president who is in power. So one of the things that should be done is making the Electoral Commission an independent organ in the country, where it can also hold its own elections to select the people that are supposed to be in those seats. This will reduce the biases and the interests which people attach to their positions. If someone is the chairperson electoral commission, or is the one leading the electoral commission, and the system that put him into power was not attached to any other political party, though this person might have biases also, but that will always restrict him from always admitting to the president who is in power. We are seeing that Museveni is using that tool as his front gun. Another thing that we have to focus on, it is also giving the opportunity to the human rights fighting organs to also take their chance and take their responsibilities and handle the human rights responsibly. We see that the intimidations and the reportings that come on space, they are not handled, just because these organizations are also silent, and also to evidence that even the government of Museveni is fighting them. Of recently, we see it is fighting the civic groups in Uganda, also intimidating the ambassadors of other countries in Uganda, intimidating them not to get involved in the politics of Uganda, of which we also don't think that it will work, as we also request those organizations to also help us fight for the rights, because we notice it will be so hard for a person who is still in the government also to also take part in fighting for the rights, because this will be considered as a trait from his fellows. And of course, that person will not think about doing something like that, because he's also receiving some gains from that. I think those are some of the things that are supposed to be done to curb down this high increasing rate of incredibilities in the elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us in the conversation and for those recommendations. Akumu, what are your concluding remarks in 60 seconds?
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. In my concluding remarks, I'll just encourage that in Uganda, so as to have free, credible, and fair elections, we need an independent electoral commission. Another one is that we need this provision to be enforced. They are there, but then they are not into practice. We need them put into practice. And in my own view, I also feel like the number of political parties being formed should be regulated. If at all we want a free and a fair election in Uganda to take place, that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ritah, what are your concluding remarks?
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake. I agree with encourage that the Electoral Commission should exercise its powers as an independent authority, as an independent administrative body, which will also be like a beginning, like it will mark a beginning of at least some change that we would expect as citizens of the country of Uganda. And I would also advise the Electoral Commission to improve on the vigilance in order to prevent the dishonesty, because it all begins with them, as it is the one responsible for the organizations and the processes of the elections. Because, for example, when look at yesterday, in Kasambia, one of the new candidates contesting for the member of parliament seat was caught with false receipts, claiming that he had paid the nomination fee, yet in actual sense the receipts were fake, and due to the vigilance of the commission, he was not verified and arrested. That if dishonesty itself is in the nominees, then what is happening up there in the administrative body? So I would advise that vigilance and security should be emphasized, and enforcement of the provisions, because it is not that these people are not literate. They are literate, but they are interfered with and influenced to do what they could not have done. Hence the abuse of the rule of law, the abuse of the doctrine separation of powers, because this interference, because when you see the president himself interfering with the activities of the judiciary, it is the abuse of the doctrine of the separation of powers and the rule of law. The constitution is the supreme law of Uganda, as it is expressly stated under Article 2. So this abuse, if the fountain of Onen himself is abusing the law, what do we expect from the downer citizens? It all begins with those people, then we also follow. That is all I can say. I beg to submit.
Thank you very much, Ritah, for those wonderful concluding remarks. Ashraf, allow me end with you on your concluding remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Drake, for giving me this opportunity. But still, I would like now on a serious note to end this but with a very heavy heart, but in a way that maybe I would be calling out my fellow youth, because me, I believe in change, because change is a fact of life. But however, we are the largest population and we are the largest people that can make an impact on our nation, because mere speeches, I remember the Iron of Word speech that was said by Otto von. It was like the greatest questions of the day will not be answered by mere speeches, but by blood and what? By blood and iron. I would now maybe like to refer to that above statement and say, we have said a lot of words. We have conducted very many conferences. We have made very many articles, and it has been more of working, more of speech than action. May I call upon my fellow youth who make the largest percentage to rise up right now and make the necessary steps, go into those leadership positions, fail to vote those corrupt leaders. Speak up, because we are the largest percentage and we make an impact to this nation. Because I'm very annoyed by my fellow youth, where you find like it is someone you're fronting a candidate who is over 70 years and has been in power maybe for 2 terms. I'm on the seat of an area MP. I look back to my area in Chinchizi East, where we have the incumbent, the Honorable Dr. Philise, who has served for 20 years and is like, even if you bring military tanks and you bring everything, I will not get out of power. And when it is a nomination day, you find that my age mates are the very people that are backing him. So what should be done then? I also now recommend and say, still, it is not out of their will, but the monetization has been is skyrocketing. Someone is I've been starving for a day, and someone gives me 5,000, automatically have to be on his rally. So I call for the independence of the electoral commission. Without that, everything we are doing, an election will be just a mere game. We go there, we play, and go back. But the results are already known. Next, we as the youth, we should make sure that we rise up and be the very people to go into these leadership positions. Because me personally, I have tried to do that, but the results were very disastrous. On a polling station, I found myself, even my relatives were not voting me, which was very disheartening, on grounds that they were given money, and of course I didn't have money. And I know I have ideas, but automatically my candidate I was standing with was giving almost 50,000 to everyone that I was contesting with. So it was very obvious. So we have to. I'm calling upon my fellow youth. Of course, I had to forgive them, but I believe in the next years they are going to reform. And maybe if a candidate of their age comes up, let's support this new generation to come up and give a resting place for the past regime, because we all have capabilities. We are all in schools. We are done. So where are we going to go if we allow these very people to keep on in power? And where will our sisters and brothers go? Then the electoral commission, we should get an independent body that is independent as it is semantically written, independent, not something that is just there as a term but not being independent. And then still, I would still call upon the old regime and the people that have been in power, because they say even the best dancer leaves the stage. It is high time they leave the stage for the new generation, because it will be high time. It's high time they vacate and go to the resting places, so that they allow room for other propagating leaders, the new generation of leaders. And they should also believe that we all have capacities and capabilities, and if we are given space to rise up. But if we are suffocated, I do not see any way to go. And I believe that once all those things are put in place, the electoral commission becomes independent, and the youth and the new generation rises up and takes in the leadership positions and distances itself from those tendencies of corruption, vote rigging, and vote bribery. Because it is so sad. The very youth, our age mates, are the very people that get engaged in carrying buckets of votes. Someone gets a bucket of votes and runs. How do you think someone who is 70 years is able to do that? Automatically, it's we, the youth, that are taking part in that. And then the security forces, they should also play their sovereign role of protecting people of Uganda and their property, other than suffocating and supporting the ruling party to suffocate us. So once we do that, I believe everything will be good. The security forces should be now the very people to give us security as we are standing. They say, please, the elections were very free and fair, leave office. But now, if we are seeing it in the final stage, in the stage, a candidate is going to vote, is going to a polling station, maybe let me say an opposition candidate is going to a place, and when he's going to, before he even reaches there, it is like a military barracks. It is full of all the army that has never happened in the Uganda. But you call for someone that has been killed there, no one will turn up. But just say that Chaguranyi is coming to vote from the from there, they will have to bring tanks and tanks just to suppress his rights. When we consider that, I believe freedom is speech is power, information is power, and we the youth, it is our right time to rise now, because we have killed our past, and unless we reform, we are busy killing our future. But we have to rise up now, and I have to thank the Center for Constitutional Governance, the Hope Initiative Club, for giving us platforms to air out our views and also speak out what is out on our minds. And I believe for God and my country, everything will be well if we do that, with God being our helper. Thank you so much, Mr. Drake.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, for those wonderful submissions and passionate submissions. Thank you so much, Akumu, Philise, Makoha, Ainembabazi, Ritah, and Muhoozi Daniel for the submissions you've made. It has been a thrilling and interesting conversation with all of you here, and thank you once again for representing Kabale University. But also to you, our dear esteemed viewers, this is the Inter-University Debate Series, and it is still going on. Please do keep up the conversations on Civic Space TV in our comment section, but also on our social media handles. Otherwise, my name is Douglas Onen. See you in a few. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you're watching us from. Bye-bye.